The first time I realized my friend's mom was hiding something from everyone, she was standing in a coffee shop pretending to read a menu she already knew by heart. It was a Tuesday morning, just after 9. I was there because Daniel had forgotten his wallet at my apartment again, and apparently returning a wallet counted as a friendship emergency. He had texted 3 times before I even got out of bed. Please, before my mom kills me. So I walked the 6 blocks to the cafe near his house. And there she was. Claire. Daniel's mother was 47, though I never thought of her as a number. She was just Claire, the woman who remembered how I took my coffee, asked about my classes without making it sound like an interview, and somehow noticed when I was pretending everything was fine. She looked different that morning. Not dramatically. Her hair was tied back loosely and she wore a pale blouse under a dark jacket. There was a coffee cup between both hands, untouched. I stopped beside her table. Daniel sent me. She looked up. For half a second, neither of us said anything. Then she smiled. Of course he did. I put the wallet on the table. You're welcome. You walked all the way here. It's 6 blocks. That wasn't what I asked. I shrugged. She gave me that look she sometimes gave when she knew I was avoiding the actual answer. Then her eyes dropped to the wallet. Thank you. I nodded. I should have left. Instead, I sat down. That had become a habit with her, small things turning into 10-minute conversations, 10 minutes becoming an hour without either of us noticing. She pushed her coffee toward me. Try it. I know what you drink. I changed it. I took a sip. Still terrible. A quiet laugh escaped her. Rude. She folded the corner of a paper napkin between her fingers, once, twice, then she stopped. I looked at her hands. There was no ring. That was strange. She'd been engaged for almost a year. I looked away before she could notice me noticing. Where'd Daniel? She asked. Working. He told me he was studying. He lies. So does his mother, apparently. She said it lightly. But she didn't smile afterward. Something in the air changed. I waited. Claire looked toward the window, where people passed with umbrellas tucked under their arms even though it wasn't raining. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. Her thumb hovered over it. She didn't answer. I didn't ask. That was another thing I'd learned around her. Sometimes asking made people retreat. My own phone sat face down beside my coffee. There were 2 messages on it I hadn't answered since yesterday. Neither mattered enough to open. Claire finally looked back at me. You know what's funny? What? I thought I knew what my life was going to look like by now. I smiled faintly. Most people don't. You say that like you're 80. I'm 24, I just have an old face. She laughed again. This time she held my eyes a little longer. Then she looked down. Maybe you're right. A few minutes later she stood. I should go. Yeah. She picked up her bag then paused. Are you doing anything Friday night? I frowned. Probably nothing. Good. She took out her phone. I might need a favor. What kind? Her expression changed. Not much. Just enough. I'll tell you when I see you. Then she walked away. I watched her through the glass until she disappeared around the corner. My phone buzzed before I even reached the door. A message from Claire. Friday 7, don't dress like you're going to class. I stared at it for longer than I should have. Then another message appeared. And don't tell Daniel yet. That was when I knew Friday wasn't going to be a favor. Friday came with the kind of rain that made the whole city look unfinished. At 6:45, I was standing in front of my closet wondering what Claire meant by don't dress like you're going to class. I ended up wearing a dark shirt and the only jacket I owned that didn't have a loose butt. At 6:58, my phone buzzed. I'm outside. I looked through the window. Claire was sitting in her car across the street. For a moment I just stood there. She wasn't dressed like the woman I'd seen at the coffee shop. She wore a simple black dress under a long coat, nothing flashy, but she looked different. Older, obviously. And somehow more uncertain. I walked outside. She lowered the passenger window. Get in. That's ominous. Good you're paying attention. I laughed and opened the door. For the first few minutes, neither of us spoke. The windshield wipers moved back and forth. Finally, I asked, "Are you going to tell me where we're going?" "My ex-fiancé's engagement party." I turned toward her. "What?" She kept her eyes on the road. "He isn't exactly my ex-fiancé yet." I stared at her. "Claire, he's been cheating." The words landed quietly. No raised voice, no tears. Just the rain. "I found out Tuesday," she said. "That's why I was at the cafe." I remembered the untouched coffee. "You're going?" "Yes." "Why?" She smiled without looking at me. "Because apparently I'm terrible at making sensible decisions." I didn't know what to say. She continued driving. After a while she said, "His name is Mark, we've been together 3 years." I nodded. 3 years is a long time. It is. She tightened her fingers around the steering wheel. I kept thinking I'd be angry. "You're not." "I am." She paused. "I just don't know what to do with it." That sentence stayed between us. At the restaurant, I understood the rest. Mark was there with a group of people near the entrance. And standing beside him was a man I'd never seen before. Tall, older, gray at the temples, expensive suit, the kind of person who didn't need to introduce himself because everyone already knew who he was. Claire glanced at me. "That," she said quietly, "is Adrian." "Who's Adrian?" "My date." I looked at her. "You brought a date." "I told you I needed a favor." "This is the favor." She almost smiled. "I need you to trust me." Before I could answer, Adrian approached. He shook my hand. "Daniel's friend." I nodded. "Ethan." "Right." Claire looked between us. Something about the way Adrian spoke to her made it obvious they had discussed this arrangement before. Later after dinner, I found Claire alone near the side terrace. She was holding a cup of tea with both hands. "You okay?" She nodded. Then shook her head. "Not really." I stood beside her. Not too close. Close enough to hear her breathe. She looked at the rain beyond the railing. "When I was 24, she said, "I thought 47 was ancient." I laughed softly. "So did I." She looked at me. "And now?" I didn't answer immediately. She waited. "Now it doesn't seem that far away." Something changed in her face. Not a smile. Something quieter. "You should be careful saying things like that." "I know. I'm your friend's mother." "I know. And you're 24. "I know that too." She lowered her eyes to her tea. "Good." Neither of us moved. Then, almost absent-mindedly, she reached over and straightened the collar of my jacket. Her fingers touched my neck for barely a second. She pulled away immediately. "Better." I swallowed. "Thanks." She gave me a small tired smile. "Don't make that face." "What face?" "That one." "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do." She walked back inside. I stayed on the terrace another minute, listening to the rain. I don't know why that tiny touch stayed with me. Maybe because it felt less like fixing my collar and more like admitting neither of us was as unaffected as we were pretending to be. After that night, Claire changed her routine. At least that's what I told myself. She stopped going to the cafe on Tuesday mornings. Then Wednesday. Then Thursday. I still went. I ordered the same coffee and sat at the table near the window, pretending I wasn't looking at the door every time it opened. Daniel noticed. "You've been quiet." "I'm always quiet." "Not like this." I looked up from my phone. "What does that mean?" He shrugged. "Nothing." But he kept watching me. I hated that. Mostly because I knew exactly what he was seeing. I had started checking my phone more often. Not because Claire texted me. Because she didn't. On Friday afternoon, she finally sent one message. "Can you come by? I need help with something." No explanation. I went anyway. Her house looked exactly the same. That somehow made it worse. Claire opened the door wearing jeans and a loose sweater, her hair still damp. "You came. You asked." She stepped aside. I need these moved upstairs. There were 3 boxes beside the staircase. I picked one up. What's in them? My life, apparently. I looked at her. She gave a tired smile. Mark's things. He had moved out. That was the first thing she told me. The second was that the engagement was over. Neither of us celebrated. She sat on the floor while I carried boxes upstairs. When I came back down, she was holding 2 mugs of tea. She handed one to me. Thanks. It's not coffee. I noticed. I thought maybe you were getting too dependent on it. I smiled. Maybe. She looked at me over the rim of her mug. Then away. The silence stretched. I sat across from her. Why didn't you tell me? About Mark. About everything. Her fingers tightened around the mug. Because you're Daniel's friend. There it was. The sentence neither of us had wanted to say. I looked down. Right. And because. She stopped. Because what? Nothing. I almost laughed. That's becoming your favorite word. She looked at me. For a second she seemed annoyed. Then she smiled. Maybe. The smile disappeared almost as quickly. She reached for the mug again, but her hand stopped halfway. Ethan. Yes. You shouldn't come here so much. I stared at her. She kept looking at the tea. I mean it. I know. You're 24. I know. And I'm 47. Her eyes lifted. You remember. I remember a lot about you. She went still. I hadn't meant to say that. Or maybe I had. I couldn't tell anymore. A car passed outside. Its headlights moved across the ceiling. Claire stood. I think you should go. I stood too. Neither of us moved toward the door. She was close enough that I could smell the faint shampoo in her damp hair. I looked at her. She looked at me. Neither of us spoke. Her eyes dropped briefly to my mouth. Then came back up. Just once. That was enough. I leaned forward without deciding to. She didn't move away. Not immediately. Her hand caught the sleeve of my jacket. For 1 second, everything seemed to stop. Then the front door opened. Mom. Daniel. Claire stepped back so quickly that the tea on the table rattled. I turned toward the hallway. Daniel stood there holding a grocery bag. He looked at me. Then at his mother. Then back at me. Why are you here? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Claire answered first. He was helping me move some boxes. Daniel nodded slowly. Okay. But he didn't sound convinced. I grabbed my jacket. I should go. Claire didn't look at me. Yeah. I walked toward the door. Just before I stepped outside, I glanced back. She was standing beside the table, both hands wrapped around her mug. She wouldn't meet my eyes. And somehow that felt worse than if she had. Because now I knew exactly how close we'd come. And I didn't know which of us had been the one to stop it. For the next 2 weeks, I stayed away from Claire's house. I stopped going to the cafe too. It wasn't difficult. That was the lie I kept telling myself. Then one evening, Daniel mentioned Adrian. We were sitting outside the library, sharing fries from a paper carton because neither of us had enough money for actual dinner. Mom's seeing him again, Daniel said. I looked at him. Adrian. Yeah. I picked up another fry. Good for her. Daniel shrugged. He's kind of intense. What do you mean? He's successful, owns some company, everyone knows him. I nodded. Sounds great. Daniel gave me a strange look. You don't like him. I barely know him. Still. He smiled. You're weird about my mom lately. My hand stopped halfway to the carton. What? You heard me. I laughed once. She's your mom. Exactly. He said it casually. That somehow made it worse. That night, I walked home instead of taking the bus. I passed the cafe. Claire was sitting on the bench outside. Alone. I almost kept walking. She looked up. Ethan. I stopped. Hi. She moved her bag. Zit. I sat at the other end of the bench. For a while we watched cars move through the intersection. Neither of us mentioned the house. Or Daniel. Or the almost. Finally she said, I saw you with him. With who? Daniel. I looked at her. You mean Adrian? She nodded. You looked uncomfortable. I was fine. No, you weren't. I smiled faintly. You noticed too much. So do you. That shut me up. She rubbed her thumb along the edge of her phone. He asked me to move in. I stared at her. Adrian. Yes. And I haven't answered. I looked away. Why are you telling me? I don't know. She said it quietly. Then she laughed under her breath. That's becoming my favorite answer too. I smiled despite myself. The smile faded. You should probably say yes. She turned toward me. Why? Because he's good for you. You don't know that. He's stable. So, he knows what he wants. Claire looked at me for a long moment. And you think I don't? I didn't answer. She leaned back. I spent 3 years with someone who knew exactly what he wanted. Her voice was calm. Apparently that didn't mean much. The streetlight above us flickered once. I looked at her hands. They weren't enough. What? I swallowed. His plans, his promises, all of it. She waited. I forced myself to look at her. I think you deserve someone who actually looks at you. She went completely still. Ethan. I know. You shouldn't say things like that. I know. Then why do you? I looked down at my shoes. Because I was tired of pretending. Because every time I saw her with Adrian, something inside me tightened. Because I had started measuring my days by whether I might accidentally see her. I couldn't say any of that. So I said the closest thing. Because it's true. Claire's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. She looked toward the road. I've spent my whole life trying to be sensible. I waited. And then you came along. My chest tightened. She turned toward me. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. Neither did I. She reached for my hand. Stopped. Her fingers hovered between us. Then she whispered. If I asked you to stay tonight, what would you do? I looked at her. And for once, neither of us looked away. I didn't go inside. Not because I didn't want to. That would have been easier. I looked at Claire's hand, still resting near mine, and then at the dark windows of her house. I think I should go home, I said. She nodded. Probably. Neither of us stood. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it. Her face changed. Not dramatically, just enough for me to notice. Adrian. She nodded. He wants to talk. I pulled my hand away. Then you should. She looked at me. You're angry. No. You aren't. I'm not. She gave a small tired smile. You've never been good at lying. Neither had she. I stood. Good night, Claire. Ethan. I stopped. She looked like she wanted to say something. Instead, she said good night. The next morning, she texted me. I'm sorry about last night. I stared at the message for nearly a minute. Then another appeared. I need some space. I typed *OK. Deleted it. Typed I understand. Deleted that too. Eventually I sent nothing. For 3 days, neither of us contacted the other. Then Daniel called. Can you come over? I knew from his voice that something was wrong. When I arrived, Claire wasn't home. Daniel was sitting at the kitchen table with a folder in front of him. What's that? Mom's divorce papers. I frowned. She was married before Mark. Daniel nodded. I thought you knew. I didn't. Apparently, Claire had been married at 31. The marriage had lasted 7 years. Her ex-husband had left after having an affair. She'd spent years rebuilding everything afterward. Then came Mark. Daniel rubbed his forehead. She told me she wasn't going to make the same mistake twice. I stared at the folder. What does that have to do with me? He looked at me. I don't know. A long silence followed. Then he said, Mom's scared. Of what? You. The word sat there. I couldn't make sense of it. She doesn't think you're doing anything wrong, Daniel continued. She thinks she is. I looked toward the window. Outside, Claire's car wasn't there. What did she tell you? Not much. He leaned back. She just said she doesn't want to hurt anybody again. I nodded. That was probably the closest thing to an answer I was going to get. That evening I walked past her house. The lights were on. I stopped across the street. I could have knocked. I could have called. Instead, I watched a shadow move behind the curtains. Then my phone vibrated. Claire, please don't come by tonight. I read it twice. Then I typed. I wasn't going to. I deleted it. I tried again. Do you want me to leave you alone? Deleted. Finally, I put the phone back in my pocket. I stood there another minute before turning around. On the walk home, I realized something I didn't want to admit. The hardest part wasn't that Claire was pulling away. It was that I understood why. And understanding didn't make it hurt less. The next morning, I went to the cafe out of habit. Her usual table was empty. I sat there anyway. My coffee went cold beside me. I opened our message thread. Typed her name. Then, if you still want me to stay, I'm here. I stared at the words. My thumb hovered over send. Then I locked the phone. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life had forgotten to finish the sentence. I didn't send the message. I thought that was the mature thing to do. Then 2 days later, Claire knocked on my apartment door. I opened it and forgot whatever I'd planned to say. She looked tired. No makeup, hair pulled back, a grocery bag hanging from one hand. Hi. Hi. She glanced past me. Can I come in? I stepped aside. She put the bag on the kitchen counter. I bought too much. You always do that. I know. She smiled. It was small. Familiar. That almost made things harder. I leaned against the counter. Why are you here? She looked at the floor. I owe you an explanation. You don't owe me anything. I do. She took a breath. After my first marriage ended, I promised myself I wouldn't confuse being wanted with being loved. I stayed quiet. Then Mark came along, she continued. He was safe, predictable. I thought that was enough. She opened the grocery bag and started putting things away, even though there was no reason to. I was wrong. I watched her hands. They weren't even shaking. I don't know why I noticed that. Maybe because mine were. She stopped. When I realized I was starting to care about you. Her voice caught. She looked toward the sink. I got scared. Of me. Of myself. That was the first time she'd said it plainly. I looked down. I was scared too. She turned. Why? I laughed quietly. Because you're Daniel's mom. I know. And you're older. I know. And if this went badly. I stopped. She finished the thought. You could lose your friend. I nodded. And I could lose you. The kitchen went silent. She looked at me for a long time. Then she walked closer. Not all the way. Just enough. I kept thinking you were young enough to change your mind. I might. She nodded. That scares me. I know. And I kept thinking I'd eventually get over it. I looked at her. Did you? No. She said it so quietly I almost missed it. I swallowed. I don't want to be your secret. Her eyes lifted. I don't want you to be. And I don't want to be something you choose because you're hurt. I don't. Then what do you want? She stood there with her hands at her sides. For once she didn't look away. You. The word wasn't dramatic. It didn't need to be. I closed my eyes for a second. When I opened them, she was still there. I don't know what happens next, she said. Neither do I. Daniel might hate this. Maybe. He might not understand. Probably not. She nodded. I can't promise you it'll be easy. I don't need easy. She gave a tired little smile. You say that now. I smiled back. Yeah. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she reached for my hand. This time she didn't stop halfway. Her fingers closed around mine. Warm. A little unsteady. I squeezed her hand once. She looked down at our hands and let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. "Okay," she whispered. I nodded. "Okay." And for the first time, neither of us needed to explain what that meant. 6 months later, I still didn't know what to call us. Claire didn't like labels. Neither did I. Things with Daniel had been awkward at first. Not explosive. Just awkward. He stopped inviting me over for a while, then he started again. The first time I saw him after everything happened, he opened the door, looked at me and said, "This is still weird." I nodded. "Yeah. Okay." That was it. Somehow it was enough. Claire didn't move in with Adrian. She ended things with him. Not because of me, she insisted. Because I realized I was making decisions based on being afraid to be alone. I didn't argue. She started going to the cafe again. Tuesday mornings. 8:47. Same table. Same window. She still ordered black coffee. I still told her it was terrible. She still ignored me. Some things were easier left alone. The first morning I joined her again, she pushed a cup of tea toward me. "You look tired." "I am." "Didn't sleep?" "Not much." She nodded. Neither of us mentioned why. Outside, people hurried down the sidewalk with coats pulled tight against the cold. Inside, the coffee machine hissed. A spoon hit a ceramic cup somewhere behind us. Ordinary sounds. The kind I had never paid attention to before Claire. She looked at me. "You're starring." "I know." "Why?" I shrugged. Still figuring out how this happened. She smiled. "You're still overthinking." "Probably." She reached across the table and folded the corner of my napkin back into place. She had done that the first time we talked. Except now, neither of us pretended it meant nothing. Daniel eventually got used to us. He never gave us some dramatic blessing. One evening, he just looked at Claire, then at me and said, "Are you too happy?" Claire glanced at me. I looked at her. "Mostly," she said. Daniel nodded. "Good." Then he asked if anyone wanted pizza. That was how it became normal. Not all at once. Just little pieces. A coffee here. A walk there. An argument about whether black coffee actually tasted good. Claire's house felt different too. There were fewer boxes. No traces of Mark. Her old engagement ring sat in a small dish in a drawer she never opened. She didn't throw it away. She didn't wear it. Some things didn't need dramatic endings. One evening, we sat on the same bench where she'd once asked me what I would do if she asked me to stay. The sun was going down. She leaned against my shoulder. "You remember this place?" "Unfortunately." She laughed. "Why unfortunately?" "Because you scared me." "I scared you." "Terrified." She looked up at me. "And now?" I thought about it. "Still a little." She smiled. "Good." I looked at her. "Why good?" "Because it means you understand what this is worth." I didn't answer. I just took her hand. Her fingers settled between mine like they'd learned the shape. We sat there until the streetlights came on. Nothing extraordinary happened. No promises. No speeches. Just her hand in mine and the sound of traffic passing behind us. Later at the cafe, she would still arrive at 8:47. I would still pretend I hadn't been waiting. She would still bring tea. I'd still steal a sip of her black coffee and complain. And she'd still give me that look. The one that said she remembered everything. I think that's what love looked like for us in the end. Not something that rescued either of us. Just two people who had been scared, had nearly walked away, and had decided, quietly, repeatedly, to come back. And whenever Claire asked why I still ordered the same terrible coffee, I never told her the truth. It was because she was always there at 8:47. And somehow that was enough. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?
Make sure to like this video, share and follow for more, and subscribe to my channel. Subscribe to my